So, a very warm welcome to the first in our series of Life in Leadership, a podcast from Windsor Leadership. I'm Liz Ward, the Alumni Relations Manager, and over the coming months, I'll be joined by Dave Lewis. Dave is also a Windsor Leadership Programme Chair and Facilitator, and former Deputy Chief Constable for Devon, Cornwall, and Dorset Police. And together, we'll be in conversation with a series of high-profile leaders to explore their leadership insights. We're delighted to be joined today by Lord Karan Bilimoria, founder and chairman of the global beer brand Cobra Beer. Karan is also former president of the CBI and a member of the House of Lords and former chancellor of the University of Birmingham. Welcome, Karan.
Thank you.
So first of all, Karan, exploring your passion and purpose, just give us a quick flavour of yourself.
Yes, I'm of Indian origin, born in Hyderabad in India, and came over to the UK as an international student at the age of 19, studied for several years, founded my business Cobra Beer, and built it into what I'm proud to say now is a household name here in the UK, and exported to around 30 countries around the world. And after my business took off, I started to get involved in public life and also in academia. And I have been a chancellor of two universities, the University of West London, when I was the youngest university chancellor in the country, and thereafter chancellor of the University of Birmingham for 10 years. And I hold fellowships at Oxford and Cambridge. So the academic part of my life, I greatly enjoy. I'm also somebody who's embarked on lifelong learning. I'm an alumnus of 3 business schools through executive education, Cranfield, London Business School, and the Harvard Business School. And I'm also currently in the middle of my doctorate at Cambridge University on leadership, which I've finished my first year and I've got another 3 years to go. So non-stop learning is a part of my life. The House of Lords, Parliament is another big part of my life. I've been a member of the House of Lords for 18 years. I was the third youngest peer when I joined exactly 18 years ago. I'm still one of the younger peers at the House of Lords. Our average age is 72. And I love the House of Lords. I love being an independent crossbench peer, which allows me the freedom to say what I want to, do what I want to, take part in the way that I want to, vote the way that I want to. It's a wonderful, wonderful place, and it's the most special parliamentary chamber and unique parliamentary chamber in the world, in that I think we have the greatest depth and breadth of expertise of any parliamentary chamber in the world, multiplied by a factor of 20 or more. So it's a great place to take part, but it's also a great place to learn. And of course, the third big bucket in my life is my business and being an entrepreneur, and having founded Cobra Beer from scratch in 1990 and still being founder and chairman of my business. So business, academia, and politics.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So what approach did you take when starting your entrepreneurial journey with Cobra?
Later on in life, of course, when you have this attitude of being passionate about things and being unhappy and disliking things, or being dissatisfied or as a consumer with a product or service, and then thinking, well, I can do this better, I can do this differently, I can change the marketplace. If you have that approach, you can actually make things happen. And that's exactly how Cobra Beer started. And it was through this dissatisfaction of fizzy lagers, which I discovered as soon as I came to this country as a 19-year-old student. But also these gassy lagers were horrible to drink on their own. And the most popular drink with Indian food to this day, spicy food, is chilled lager beer. But if the chilled lager beer is fizzy and gassy and bloating, well, it is not at all pleasant experience on its own, let alone with spicy food. And I was introduced to English real ale by an English friend of mine, which I love to this day. But I could drink ale happily in a pub, but not with food, because it's too heavy and too bitter. So then you think, well, ale drinkers love curry, they hate fizzy lagers, but they're forced to drink these fizzy lagers. And that's when the idea evolved. And how can I produce a beer that has the refreshment of a lager, the smoothness of an ale combined, that has a balanced, rounded, globally appealing taste, but most importantly, goes really well with all food, including curry and spicy food. And it's a really simple idea. And why beer's been around for millennia. Why didn't somebody think of that before? So it's coming up with these simple ideas that can make a huge difference. And now, to this day, Cobra is, without boasting, the best beer with any food. It's brewed smooth for all food. And it comes from this attitude of never being satisfied, always challenging, and willing to go against all the odds. And when you start, I mean, I was up against the giant beer brands. And every Indian restaurant had Carlsberg. They had Kingfisher, the biggest beer brand in India to this day, was in thousands of Indian restaurants, was already brewing and a license in the UK. So you're willing to take things against the odds, and it's, I suppose, summed up in my vision, which is to aspire and achieve against all odds with integrity. So you come up with an idea, you want to get someone with the idea, you've got all the odds stacked against you, you've got little or no means, and you go out there and you make it happen. But most importantly, you make it happen the right way. And to start in business in the first place needs guts. I think entrepreneurship, that one word is guts. The guts to do it in the first place, but also the guts to keep going when others would give up. And how do you then start in business when you have zero credibility, when nobody knows you? Why should anyone finance you, buy from you, supply you, work for you when you have zero credibility? And I think people do those things if you have faith and passion and confidence and belief in yourself, in your idea, and your product, and your brand, that gives people the faith to trust you, to give you a chance, and to want to follow you and to work for you. And I think that's absolutely crucial. And I always say, whenever I give talks to students in particular, I say, whatever you do, if you want to go to university, do a subject that you're good at and that you love. When you get your job, don't just get a job that's going to pay you a lot, get a job that you're going to love. And follow your passion, not your pension.
That's brilliant. And I wonder then, I think it doesn't neatly segue into some of the difficult times, Karan, that you had, where, for example, Cobra went into administration in 2009. And I wonder what you've learned from the difficult times in your career, as well as from, your innate oomph and energy.
Yes, the journey of building a brand from scratch is a tough one. It's not a straight line. Hopefully it's an upward trajectory, but there are lots of huge bumps in the road. And it's a question of overcoming these challenges. And then when those challenges are major crises, and in my case, there were three of them. And the third one was, I would say, the worst in 2009, when I nearly lost my business. And we had to go through a very painful restructuring process to save the business. And fortunately, I was able to form a joint venture with Molson Coors, one of the largest brewers in the world. And we saved the business, the brand, the employees, and have even looked after my shareholders thereafter. The lesson I've learned is, well, one of my favorite sayings is, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So I made a lot of mistakes. And that last crisis was caused by very rapid growth. We had a compound annual growth rate of 40% year on year for 18 years. I mean, that's by any standards phenomenal anywhere in the world. But that happened by sacrificing the bottom line for growth. And what I didn't do was to actually, at any stage, I could have slowed down the growth, consolidated, and proven the huge profitability of this brand. And since then, over the last 15 years of the joint venture, we focused on the profitability, whereas I could have done that at any time, and I didn't. And as a result, I nearly lost my business. But with crises, what I say, even with black swan events in the world, all the major global crises we've experienced over the last 25 years, whether it's 9/11, no one predicted that, whether it's the global financial crisis, when Her Majesty the Queen, Elizabeth II, went to open a new building at the LSE in 2009, all the economists were there lined up, and she said to them, why didn't any of you spot it? Very few people spotted the global financial crisis. In fact, less than a handful of economists. What about the global pandemic? The worst since the Spanish flu in 100 years, the biggest global crisis since the Second World War. Why didn't anybody spot that coming? And I could just go on with all the different crises that come out of the blue, the black swan events on a global basis, let alone on a business basis, when you have your own business crises that you don't predict. 3 times that I nearly lost my business were all very different occasions. But the 3 things I believe that got me through my crises were the same. So one, having a strong and resilient brand, and the Cobra brand was very resilient throughout. And you can apply that to an institution. If it's a university, if a university has a strong brand, for example, you can apply it to a country. The second is to have the support of your team, a loyal team. And I've had team members who stood by me through the tough times over the decades. And along with that, a family. If you have family, my wife, I married her 1 year, I met her 1 year after I started Cobra, and she's been by my side throughout. And without her support, I don't think I'd be here talking to you. And the third is, it's better to fail doing the right thing than to succeed doing the wrong thing. And it's about always practicing integrity. So if you can have a strong brand and family and team support, and you practice integrity, I think it helps you cope and get through crises.
That's superb. And Dave, you must be able to relate, perhaps particularly to the family and the integrity piece in your experience, in your senior roles within the police.
Yes, 100%. And think dealing with crisis is one of those particularly testing moments where you really lean on your support networks. And I was wondering, I don't expect selecting a suitable partner advice from you, Karen, but I wonder how you built that team and how you developed a loyal team around you.
Yes, I was very lucky. I learned a lot of lessons from my father, who went on to be Commander-in-Chief of the Central Army in India with 350,000 troops under his command. And he would always say to me, son, the true test of leadership is not in the good times, it's in times of adversity. And that is something that's absolutely spot on. Another thing I learned from my father was he was a very popular general. Everyone loved serving wherever he was. And one of the reasons was I think the way he treated people. He always said, there's no point having an efficient team. You've got to have a happy and an efficient team. And I've always remembered that. And whenever I built my team, there were just two of us. In India, by the way, there isn't a term SME. It's MSME, micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. So we started as a micro business, just my partner, Arjun Reddy, and I. There were just two of us. And we built from two and then started building a team. I noticed that building a team, one of the most important things is to choose people we hire for will rather than skill. Ideally both, but it's the will, it's the attitude that's far more important to me. If we had time, I would give you example after example of people that we've hired with that attitude who've just gone on to be phenomenal successes. And the next thing is you've got to hire people who are the best at what they do and who are much better than you are. I'm a pretty good all-rounder. I'm good at finance and at sales and at marketing, and I love production, but my specialists are much better than I am in any one of those fields. And then it's a question of allowing them to just get on with things. And if you can build a diverse team, I believe that also helps. This is not a cliched sort of diversity and inclusion for the sake of it. I've seen it when I built Cobra from scratch. We built a mini United Nations of people from all over the world, different cultures, different mindsets, different backgrounds. When you put together diverse people, you create this buzz, and it's a far more innovative environment when you do that, when you have a diverse team. And I mean, this has been proven by research done by companies like Deloitte that more diverse teams are more innovative. And I've seen that firsthand. The key is to build this team and create that buzz and let people get on with things. And then occasionally they'll fail. But as long as they've tried and they failed and you learn from your failures, you move on. But you've got to create that environment for that to happen. And a lot of leaders don't do that. A lot of entrepreneurs are too controlling. They don't let go. They don't allow people to just get on with things.
That's brilliant. And Dave, that sense of needing to retain control versus actually delegating and allowing people the space and the freedom to come up with the solutions. You must have some examples from your career.
Well, I think anybody in leadership realizes that is one of the biggest problems that people have as leaders, just having to hold on to something and not being able to release it. And I'm interested, Karen, how you do that, because it seems you said you're a good all-rounder. I'd be surprised if there's anyone better in your team at sales, given what I've seen of you today. So how do you allow people that sort of freedom to operate and to let them go to do their thing that they're best at?
Again, this is something I've learned from just observing my father growing up and how he would do the same thing. When in that environment as a general, you've got this immense power that you can give orders and people have to follow them. But how can you do it in a way that people want to? People actually want to follow you. People love following you. And I could give you example after example where those little touches where you care about people, where you will not constantly be looking over their shoulder. You allow them to get on with it, but you will also care for them, care for their families, care for their well-being. You praise people publicly. And I've learned this as well. If you tell somebody they've done something wrong, it's best to do that in private and not in public. Whereas if you want to tell somebody they've done something well, do that in public. It makes them feel good and it hopefully inspires others.
Yeah, I love that, because what you haven't done at any point there is say, set up a performance regime, get the metrics and all that sort of thing. You've talked about be open about praising and congratulating and celebrating people, and then deal with the issues in private, which I really like as a leadership philosophy.
Thank you for these insights, Karen and Dave. Karen, on our programmes, life balance comes up regularly. Do you think you've got it right?
If you look at your life in three areas, so there's your own life, your own well-being, your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being as an individual. Then you've got the work life, whatever your work is. Now, in many people, it's a one-dimensional work life. They have one job. And in my case, it's a three-dimensional, multi-dimensional work life. So there's your work life. And then the third is, if you have a family, your family life. And I always say that of the three, the most important, whatever happens, is your family life. And in however busy I've been in building a business from scratch, in doing all the various things I've been lucky to get the opportunity to do, I've always tried to put my family first. You come across so many very successful people who have broken family lives, who've missed out on their children's schooling and childhood and growing up. I've prioritized it. However busy I've been, I've hardly missed a single parents' meeting. I've tried to go to every sports match, and we've got 4 children, and I've loved it. And when we travel, I may be on the phone, even when we're traveling around the world, but I'm with them, and they know I'm there. And I'd much rather have it that way, where I may be working, but I'm with them, prioritizing the family the whole time, whatever happens. When my father was sadly sick with cancer in India for 1.5 years, I would go out to India 3 times a month. Sometimes at the drop of a hat, I'd just cancel everything and get on that plane and go and see my father. It's just the most important thing by far is your family. And if you can get the priorities right, and then if you also realize that time is stretchable, it's amazing how much you can do. I'm a very busy person normally, and then I became president of the CBI. I became president of the Confederation of British Industry. Nobody warned me. I didn't see it. It was before the pandemic that I was appointed. And suddenly you have this global pandemic, and you're president in a massive global crisis. And then on top of that, I was president when the start of the Ukraine war. So you're a crisis president, and it took up, without exaggeration, 2/3 of my time. But I still attended the House of Lords. I still ran my business. I still carried on being Chancellor of Birmingham University, and I carried on doing everything else that I did on top of having 2/3 of my time filled off CBI. So you can do it. It's amazing what is possible, but you can only do it if you have two things. One, you as an individual can switch on from one thing to another thing very quickly. So if it's Cobra, and I'm now going to be in Parliament, I've forgotten about Cobra, I'm focusing on Parliament. I'm going to Parliament, doing something in academia, forgotten Parliament, I'm now focusing on academia. So if you have that ability to switch on and off different things, and most importantly, having a fantastic team, you've got to have a really, really good team. And I'm very lucky I've got a great team. And at the CBI, when I was president, I had a chief of staff seconded to me by one of the big four accountants. Without that chief of staff, I would not have been able to achieve a fraction of what I achieved as president CBI.
Thank you. Thank you. So the importance of family comes through very clearly there, but also the importance of a fabulous support team around you and the ability to compartmentalize the different areas of your life and the different things that you're involved in.
By the way, there's a little bit of a contradiction to that. Is the beauty of doing all these different things is they all feed off each other as well. So it's amazing how much each adds to the other in the value you can bring.
Well, I think that ability to switch quickly between things and to deal with something, put it down, move on is a key aspect of senior leadership. I do admire Karen for having quite so much there to have dealt with. And I wonder how you, Karen, managed to use that to give your team's license as well, both in terms of the workplace, because presumably they need to feel empowered and be able to deliver on your behalf, but also how do they then get their work-life balance right under your leadership?
Yes, and that you've got to be very, very careful and considerate, because you may be somebody who's willing to work all hours, every day, wherever you are, but you should not expect your team to do the same. That obviously, if there's an urgent crisis, everyone drops everything and will do whatever, whenever. But on the whole, if I send an email at midnight or at 5 in the morning on the way to the airport or whatever, I don't expect a response. I've sent it because it's convenient for me. I get it out of the way. Then the response is in good time whenever the person is at work. So you've got to have that understanding. And once you have the understanding with your team, it's amazing. People will go the extra mile, and it's all about people going the extra mile. The best advice my father ever gave me is whenever you're given a job, don't just do it, do that little bit extra that nobody asks you to do. And that's what I love is when my team do that. And if I ask them to do something, I have to have faith and trust them And then I'm dependent on them. And if they know that you're trusting them, you then get that trust back. And the best definition of trust was one of my Harvard Business School professors gave a lecture during the pandemic, I remember, Frances Fry, on trust. And I'll condense a 1 hour lecture to you in less than 1 minute. And she said it's a triangle. To get trust from people, you've got to be authentic. It's the real you. You've got to have the logic. You've got to have the capability, the knowledge to deliver what you're promising that you're going to be doing. And the third is empathy. Are you in it for them or are you in it for yourself? So authenticity, logic, and empathy, and you can get trust from people. And this is where the leader has to be able to have that credibility to know what you're talking about and to be able to walk the talk and to muck in and do it as well. So if I'm being briefed for a speech, yes, my team are helping me with hundreds of pages of research. I'm the one who's going to have to distill that down to 5 minutes and make a speech. But I'm reliant on them for that research, without which I can't do it. And they know that.
The other thing I'd say about trust is, of course, it's a time thing, isn't it? It's built slowly, but you can lose it very quickly. So I think the old saying is trust arrives on foot and departs on horseback. And so you need to be in it for the long run, don't you? And people have to believe that you're in it for the long run and work along with you.
Looking ahead to the future dreams, what do you think are the major challenges for leaders over the next 10 years?
The current world that we live in my view, is the most uncertain and challenging world that I've experienced in my career so far. There's uncertainty, it abounds around the world. There is a lack of anchor leadership in the world, where in the past you would have one very good leader that the world could rely on. We don't have that anywhere at the moment. And so there is this lack of leadership and an abundance of uncertainty. And that's a very bad situation. So that means we as individuals have to be able to deal with this uncertainty going forward. And uncertainty we don't even know about, events that we don't even know about that are going to be coming up, as I've said, in the past 25 years, all these black swan events. So that means you need to be very adaptable, very resilient, and the responsibility you have is more important than ever before. That in the most difficult times, it's having that self-belief. And if you have the confidence to have that self-belief, that saying of Mahatma Gandhi is my favorite saying, which if I paraphrase it, is your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits form your character, and your character determines your destiny. And if you have that self-belief, you've then got to inspire others. And that's a great role of leaders, is stability to inspire others, because that inspiration creates aspiration. That aspiration creates achievement. And that achievement by those people in turn creates inspiration. So you're creating these virtuous circles of, of achievement and inspiration and aspiration, which is very powerful, but it starts from the leader. And you can only do that if, even against this horrible backdrop that we have around the world, have that self-belief, be able to be confident to lead people there. It's got to be that authentic, genuine leadership that people will believe in and trust you.
And that, I think, kind of leads on to the legacy question, really. What would you like your legacy to be?
The best lecture that I ever attended was at Harvard Business School. And it was the final lecture before I became an alumnus of Harvard Business School. And it was given to me by one of the most famous ever business school professor, Professor Clay Christensen. And he came and gave this lecture. I'll never forget it. There were two sections, almost 200 of us in the lecture room. And he apologized that he'd been very ill. It was his first big lecture. He'd had a stroke, had cancer, he'd recovered. And he said, look, the stroke hasn't affected my movements, affected my mind. If this happens in the lecture, I sometimes can't find the words I want to say. Shout them out. It'll save some time. And we had to shout out the words many times. At the end of the lecture, he was in tears and we were in tears. And his message was very simple. He said, have you all stopped and thought, what is the purpose of your life? And then he said, linked to that, how will you measure your life? And it's such an important question. How often do we actually stop and think, what is the purpose of my life? And how am I going to measure my life? And it's a very individual question, a very individual answer. And he's written a book about it. How do you measure your life? So I think about it and I say, well, actually, one of the people who's inspired me a lot is my great-grandfather, my maternal great-grandfather, who was an entrepreneur in Hyderabad in South India, where I was born. He was a philanthropist. He was a great public servant, and he became a member of the Indian equivalent of the House of Lords. So in many ways, I followed in his footsteps 4 generations later in this country. Now, if I can do anything in my life that can inspire people 4 generations from now, it will have been worth it. So if that's what you call legacy, I think that's the best legacy you can ever leave, is to inspire people years ahead. And I don't know if I'm going to be capable of doing that, but my great-grandfather did it for me.
I feel like there's a well there that we've taken one bucket out of, but there's an awful lot more that we could go into.
Well, you've asked so many wonderful questions. Thank you.
And thank you for being so generous, not just your time, but also with your thoughts and your reflections, your ideas. I know when we do welcome you to Windsor, it's a real precious time with you. And I know that the participants really value what they're able to get out whilst you're with us in person. But
well,
for now,
I love being there myself. So thank you.
Well, I'm sure there'll be many more opportunities. For now, a huge thank you for being part of this podcast with us today. Lord Karan Bilimoria, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.